just continues to jump. So, uh-oh.
All right. Hi guys, it is April 22nd, Earth Day, and this is Insight Policing, live and uncut. My name is Dr. Megan Price. I direct the Center for Applied Insight Conflict Resolution, and we are talking about insight policing, and we're talking about policing, and we're talking about communication and what it takes to make policing and keep policing positive. We are joined with our regular contributors, Mike Delaney and Andre Brooks. You want to say hello?
Yeah, hey guys, Mike Delaney, 30-year law enforcement veteran. Most of my time has been spent here in the DC area. I'm also an assistant co-instructor for Insight Policing.
Good evening, everybody. I'm Andre Brooks. I'm also a law enforcement personnel here in the DC area. Still currently active with 30 plus years. Also a co-instructor for Insight Policing. Good to be here.
Yeah. So this was a big week, guys, right? What happened?
Yeah, this was a very big week. We were talking about this earlier, how this verdict, it pretty much changed, well, not just the verdict, but just the incident itself has really changed policing. It changed the world. It changed the way people look at police officers. It changed the mindset of veteran, retired officers like Andre and myself. So this has really been monumental, and it will go down. I don't think it'll be forgotten. Mm-hmm. What do you think, Ray?
Well, I think the decision has. I'm a little bit less pessimistic about whether or not the change is going to really come to policing. I mean, we all hope it would. I mean, look back at Rodney King. That was even though there was no guilty verdicts there, we all know what occurred after that. Policing is a very funny job. You have things like this that have occurred before, but then it seems like 2-3 months from now, a week from now, we back at the same thing. So it's like, okay, yeah, it's great that finally a police officer was found guilty for something so heinous, and we actually all watched that, and I mean, definitely a murder. But will policing change as a whole? I mean, will qualified immunity be taken away from everybody? How will this decision change policing as we go forward? And we would hope that it will change policing, but I'm not too sure, just through over repeated incidents after incidents,
So, I mean, you brought up a couple of things that I think are really important. One, I mean, what we're talking about is Derek Chauvin's conviction for killing George Floyd last May, and he was pronounced guilty on every count within 10 hours of closing arguments, which was just astonishing. And the whole United States was captivated by this trial. So one thing that I'm wondering from what you said, Andre, is, well, the other thing you said was things happen in policing all the time. There are crises, and 3 months later, you think that we're on the brink of change and nothing happens. It becomes the same, or a new crisis takes over. So the focus shifts. So you're wondering if things will change. But I'm curious, if they do, what would be some of your top hopes for change stemming from this particular conviction?
Well, my top hope is if you notice throughout this trial and throughout the last couple of, especially the last year or so, the ability, you keep hearing this on and on, and I watch CNN a lot, but you keep hearing conflict resolution, insight policing type skills to build officers, to give them a better way to diffuse a situation so you don't have something like this occur. So, a deeper understanding of police officers in the community and training. It's got to be an issue with training to ingrain to these officers, old and new, that the time has come for you to choose a better path in dealing with people, not sacrificing your policing survival skills, but pretty much upping your game to speak to these people and to speak to people you have to interact with in a more professional way, you know, to try and diffuse a situation instead of escalating the situation. So, you know, until we can bridge understanding and respect with the community, you know, we up against a never-ending battle until these guys realize that.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, so let me clarify something here. When I said there's change, I didn't mean, hey, you know, we're finally crossing that bridge where, you know, everything is great. When I said that, what I meant by that was we took a step back in policing. Just the actions that the officer took, you know, he was rightfully found guilty in my opinion, for you know, kneeling on George Floyd's neck for 9 minutes. You know, the evidence was overwhelming, and I mean the video spoke volumes. And we as officers have to realize that we can't continue to police the way, you know, policing was done back in the 90s and the early 2000s. You can't do that. We have to evolve. And again, I think we took a step back. I think we lost what communication we were building with the community. And a lot, you know, just for people listening, just understand that a lot of us officers, whether we're sworn now or retired, are not for that type of treatment. You know, we're not for that. You know, we want to do things the right way. We want to make a difference, and we have to continue to rebuild. Even when the trial started up until the verdict, we had 3 other incidents that were kind of questionable. You know, we had another one in Minneapolis where the officer grabbed a taser, or she said she was grabbing a taser and mistakenly grabbed a gun, and another young man lost his life. And then we had the incident in Chicago where the 13-year-old boy was shot. You know, that was questionable, and you know, all the information has not been released on that as well. But it's still negative press out there for the police. You know, and we have to turn that corner. You know, if we ever want to begin to go back in the right direction where we want to be with the community, we have to.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I mean, you know, tough questions got to be asked, you know, and until, I hate to say it, but there is a bit of, no, that's not a bit of, there's systematic racism throughout the police departments. I mean, it's the fact, you know, it's a fact that some of us don't want to recognize, but I mean, it definitely is. I mean, and you see people starting to speak out against it, you know, people in management and government, you know, finally coming to grips and saying, yeah, or, you know, realizing and speaking on it, you know. And how do we change that? How do we change that culture? How do we change the culture of policing? So, you know, no one needs to be killed at the hands of police, but, you know, there's a disproportionate amount of people of color that are being killed over and over again. And hey, you know,
you're absolutely right.
Your
And I think what this trial, you know, showed Americans and probably the world is that there can be accountability, you know, where there hasn't been accountability in so many cases, that really the public is behind accountability. And that when an officer breaches not only the public's trust by killing somebody unnecessarily, but also the trust of other law enforcement officers, really, who don't stand behind that. I mean, we saw officers taking the stand over and over again saying that's not what we do, and these actions do not represent who we are. The problem, though, of course, is that the public sees these actions and attributes these actions to police more generally. So this moment of accountability is so critical, and hopefully, I mean, it's hard because on the one hand, police officers do an extraordinarily difficult job and sometimes are put in a position where they have to use force, and there are terrible outcomes. And because of the behaviors of some, that kind of the kind of protection around what officers may have to do is going to be diminished. And so officers, I'm not sure But as officers, I mean, I'm sure that there are a lot of emotions around that. I mean, how are we supposed to do our job if we're not protected? But at the same time, it also goes back to, the training and the culture. Those actions aren't necessarily for effective and safe policing. So hopefully with accountability, officers won't think that they can get away with those things. And, they will think twice about using force and really destroying families and communities in that way.
Right.
You're right.
And I know we touched on this before on previous talks, but the more of these incidents that we have that impact the policing negatively, the less chance that we have of recruiting good officers. I know I keep saying it, but that is big.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, they continue to see this, and it's instead of people thinking, you know what, let me go in and try to make a difference, let me make some change. Some people just look at it and say, I don't want any parts of that. But, the negative of that is, okay, if you don't do it, then, there's a chance of that we'll continue to breed these officers that we don't want, so, and also, go ahead, Joe.
I was just gonna say, you're gonna get officers that aren't invested in the community and don't really care about the community. And that's one of the biggest issues. And your point at hand is what's going on in Baltimore right now. They're down at 700. Look at all the crime in Baltimore. They got 700. They're talking about closing police districts because they can't staff them adequately.
So 700 sworn officers?
Yes, for Baltimore City. And I mean, the murder rate is off the chain up there. Yeah. So, I mean, if you can't recruit qualified, and I know this is an issue all across the country with policing to try to recruit qualified folks, but, maybe the backgrounds need to be changed. I mean, they need to do some in-depth looking into these people's backgrounds to find out exactly, I mean, who these people really are, who are carrying these guns and who they're hiring for their communities to protect and serve. So, I mean, we got a real issue. We got a real issue. Some people just really don't want. Some people really shouldn't carry a gun and have a badge out here. That's really true. I mean, they just do it for a paycheck, but they don't really care about the community that they serve and protect.
I just think also we need to get back to recruiting in the high schools and colleges and things like that. You need to have good representation, though. You have to have recruiters, a nice variety of recruiters, males, females, different races, different religious backgrounds and things like that. So people can see themselves in that job, you have to. So, but I do want to point out something also is we, society as a whole, whether it's police, non-police personnel, we can't continue to group all of these police incidents as one. Just because something is put out in the media, we can't immediately say that's negative, that's bad, that shouldn't have happened, that's a bad shooting. We have to look at each incident individually, and sit down, and obviously in most cases, all of the information is not released by the police department or by the prosecutors or even the defense. But we have to look at each incident individually. I know it's a lot going on now, but we have to take one step at a time, when it comes to that.
I can tell you, nobody wants to shoot and kill shoot their weapon in the line of duty and have somebody die. I can tell you, I've not met one police officer, whether or not they have adverse feelings about the community that they serve, but I've not met one police officer who say, I want to shoot and kill somebody. But you're right, Mike. I mean, you're definitely right.
So help me as less experienced than you two. So tell me what you're hoping to be better by looking at each. I mean, why do they each need to be looked at separately and assessed differently? I mean, I'm just curious where you're coming from with that.
Just because, I know a lot of times the headlines, they may come out and say police shooting, police kill someone. Just from seeing that, you need to form your own opinion regarding that individual incident and not just clump everything together, and you have to base it on your fact, on the information that's given and your background, and you can discuss with other people, but don't just jump to conclusions right away. You know,
Right,
we've
that
been
it's necessarily a bad shooting or
right.
there was no justification there, or that, right, okay, or that it played
All
into.
shootings look bad, trust me, but
Yeah.
sometimes, as much as people don't want to hear, some shootings are justified.
Mhm.
And the facts obviously are clearly shown. And what you're seeing, just like with the Ohio shooting, is the transparency of the department and the governments now for those areas. They're releasing video showing that.
Yeah.
I mean, look, as tragic as that incident is, I mean, you as an officer come up on a scene of somebody about to stab someone else, you're put in a situation that if you don't act upon it, and that person ultimately stabs the other person, and that person dies or gets seriously injured, then you have people saying, well, why didn't you act to do something to stop that? But when you do something, clearly somebody has a weapon. I mean, you have to protect and serve and preserve life. That's what you have to do. So, I mean, you know, almost no one's situation, and with the climate of policing today, it's just made it even worse because now they are grouping everything, even justifiable shootings, all together. And I mean, police are up against a brick wall, and it's a tough environment right now to be a police. But but Chauvin's actions and officers like Chauvin have created this bubble around all police, and it's going to be hard to get away from that and see change. I mean, because like Mike said, definitely has set us back years and years from what he did. I mean, watching that, so.
Yeah, this rates up there with the Rodney King. Just remembering that video is worse to me. He killed him, so that's worse. So
Right.
that stayed forever. And this is, again, we say this again, but it's 2021, and we're still talking about the same thing. We're just changing the narrative. We use it like we were saying back when we were on the streets there. We just changed the name, the information on the incident report, leave the narrative the same, so and you can't do that. This because we can't grow. We can't get by this if we don't start to change.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Yeah, great points. So yeah, a really impactful week stemming from a hugely impactful incident with George Floyd, started, mass protests all over America, and hopefully we will in 10 years from now, we'll look back and say 2021 might have been like 1994, but 2031 is different. So hopefully we'll make strides.
Hey, that's our hope for everybody. That's our hope for every citizen across the United States, that people don't have to worry about this situation anymore. I mean, that's just for anybody, any kid driving, any person of color, anybody. You don't want to have to worry about. Back when we were younger, police were your friend. You officer friendly. You looked up to these guys and respected police. But I mean, when you see that police don't respect you, why would you have to? Why would you feel like you should give them respect? I mean, so yeah, hopefully the next 10 years coming, that change will definitely come and be a much happier environment, I'm sure.
Yeah.
Let's hope we start sooner rather than later.
That's right. That's right. Thank you for the conversation, and thank you all for watching. Tune in next week for our next Insight Policing live stream Uncut.